In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the psychological reasons why athletes worry so much about what other people think. And then I'm going to walk you through a strategy that you can use to try to work past this worry to allow yourself to play freely and to play with confidence. Hey there. I'm Eli Straw, a mental performance coach who works with athletes from around the world on building a stronger mental game. Now, this care or worry about what other people think is not inherently bad. And anytime that I'm working with an athlete in my one on one coaching and this comes up, I always tell them that first. Because, of course, we care. I was just talking with a golfer yesterday about how his parents and his coaches and other people have invested so much in him to get him to where he is right now. And so naturally, he wants to give back. He wants to show them that all the hard work he's put in, all the investment that they've put in, whether it's been time or money, have been worth it. And he wants to do so by trying to perform well for them. The challenge for him, and also the challenge for a lot of athletes, is that this ends up leading more into fear and more into worry than it does, lead into more of an aggressive kind of I want to go out there and succeed sort of mentality. So, again, it's not a bad thing. You care. That's completely normal. And I think it's great that you care about other people and you want to play well for other people. But we have to be careful that this doesn't turn into a worry. And most importantly, it's not actually holding you back. So, there are a few different reasons why this fear, or this worry does show up. And one of them is going to be that you tie your self worth into your performance. This is a quintessential reason why athletes will worry so much about their performance and then worry so much about what people are thinking of them because they think, well, I'm only good and people will only think that I'm a good player if I perform well. To be honest with you, I felt this a lot when I played, and it's something that I've even struggled with personally within my work now because I think it's so easy for us when we care deeply about something and we put so much of ourselves into what we do. We spend so much time practicing what we do that it's natural for us to then start to associate our worth as people with how well we do in our sport, in our work, or in anything else that we are doing, whatever we are passionate about and whatever is important to us. Unfortunately, though, if I'm going into a game and I think to myself, people will only think that I'm a good player and a good person and will only be proud of me if I play well. Now, mistakes and playing poorly hold a lot more weight than they need to. Because if I make a mistake, that doesn't just mean that I've made a mistake in a game. It means people are going to think less of me. It means I'm going to think less of me. So we naturally have this increased amount of pressure placed on our performance and a lot more fear focused on failing, making mistakes, losing, simply because we are tying our self-worth into our performance. Now, another reason very, very closely tied to this idea of having our self-worth attached to our performance is the fear of failure, but most importantly, the fear of embarrassment. Now, I mentioned in an episode just a couple days ago about this basketball player that I'm working with who is finding himself hesitating, second guessing, and playing with fear because he's really afraid of embarrassing himself in front of other people. There are a lot of people watching him, and he doesn't want to embarrass himself. But even on a smaller scale, when there are not as many people watching, I've had athletes in high school who are just, playing in front of a few people, but they still feel this embarrassment. And I think the truth is, it doesn't matter how many people are watching you. If there are just one or two people watching you, we can still feel fear about embarrassing ourselves in front of them. And then that's gonna turn into me not wanting to mess up, again, me holding myself back because I don't want to embarrass myself in front of these other people. Now, another reason will be the expectations that you might feel from others. This could be expectations your parents place on you, your coaches place on you, or your, teammates or friends or peers. Now, when I say the expectations they place on you, something I'm going to talk about here in a second is that a lot of times these are expectations that we project onto those people. So for example, the golfer that I mentioned a few minutes ago, sometimes he feels like he is expected to perform well to make all the investment that other people have put into him worthwhile. That's not necessarily the way the other people are thinking about it, because he's even expressed to me that his parents, for example, have told him that what they want to see is him enjoying himself, being confident, playing freely. That's what will really pay back to them in a sense, or make them feel like the investment has been worthwhile. So he knows that logically. But when he goes into a performance, he feels the expectations that he assumes they are placing on him. And then the next one is going to be this idea of projecting or making up in your mind what other people are thinking of you. And I hear this a lot from athletes. I did it a lot. And it's the idea of you imagining what other people are thinking. You don't have any, you know, concrete evidence that somebody thinks that you're a bad player, but you just assume that they think you are a bad player. So it's almost this idea of assuming that people are watching or judging more than they really are. And it's always, so interesting. And again, I use these examples of athletes I've worked with, but there's not a single example that I've shared or I will share that I haven't personally experienced myself in terms of, the fear, the anxiety, the negativity, all of that sort of stuff. But every single athlete who talks about, them thinking other people are, thinking they're a bad player or whatnot, they say they're probably not thinking that because I don't think that way about my teammates. When I'm watching a game, I'm not judging those people and thinking, oh, they're a horrible person if they make mistakes. I understand that mistakes happen. But then when it comes to themselves, they imagine that everybody is being hypercritical over their mistakes. They are thinking that they're not a great player, not a good person because they made these mistakes. So when we are experiencing all of these different fears, these worries, these imagined expectations or feeling like people are watching us maybe more than they are, not even watching, but judging us more than they might actually be. This is where we find ourselves playing with fear. And as I'm going to talk more about when it comes to the strategy, we really have two choices when it comes to having other people's opinions of us drive our play. And I think ultimately the best place to get to is to not have people's opinions drive our play. But if they are driving our play, the one option would be I'm scared of losing their approval. And this is the most common option that controls athletes' play, where I'm scared of losing their approval. I'm scared of embarrassing myself. So then I play with fear and I hold myself back. The other option is I really want to show everybody how great of a player I am. So I'm going to go out there. I'm not afraid of making mistakes. I'm going to go full force, play aggressively, and work to get that approval. I think that one is admittedly one of the most difficult mindsets to have because if we're so focused on proving to other people how good we are, it is natural to start criticizing ourselves if we're not feeling like we're living up to that potential or start to become afraid, like I said just a second ago, about losing their approval. So now that we know, where this fear is coming from, where this worry comes from, why we care so much, why we worry so much, what can we do about this? Well, there are a few different strategies or kind of tips that I have for you that I would encourage you to apply. And they're strategies that, again, I've seen success with within my one-on-one coaching. And the first one is it is important for you to identify who you are trying to impress. Is it just the masses in general? So it's just this idea of anybody that's watching me, I am very worried about them thinking that I'm a good player or a bad player. Or is it more specific about your coach or your parents? If we can get specific about who we are trying to impress, it becomes a little bit clearer as to how we can go about altering this perception that we have. And that brings me into the second tip or the second kind of strategy or part of the strategy, and it's you want to try to reframe your just kind of your purpose for playing, and we want to go from trying to impress to just trying to compete. This is going to take a few different forms based on if you are able to identify one specific person that you are trying to impress. So for example, going back to the golfer that I mentioned that I had a conversation with this week, most of his worry about other people has to do with, again, him trying to pay back the people who have invested in him. Yes, that's applying to his college coach right now, but for him, it's mainly about his parents. And so we were discussing what actually gives back to his parents. And that's where he was able to make this mindset shift or begin to make it. It's something that he is going to continue to work on moving forward because it's not an easy thing to do at all. But instead of him thinking, I have to be successful and get a certain score or win these tournaments or win these matches, what's really going to pay my parents back is them seeing me enjoy myself, play with confidence, be resilient, so bounce back from mistakes, not allow mistakes to bring me down. That's what really pays them back. And so if you're able to identify one specific person or a couple people who you are trying to impress, and you think to yourself, why am I trying to impress them? And what would actually impress them? Or what would actually give back to them? Or what would actually make them think that I'm a good player or I'm a good person? And we can start to reframe our thinking from being so focused on our results within our play to make our thinking more about our character traits, the controllable parts of our game, the attitude we have when we perform. And that's a good way for us to try to work past this worry and turn it into more of a positive thing for us. Now, on the flip side of that, what I was really referring to when I say go from trying to impress to trying to compete, that is a little bit more of that idea I mentioned a few minutes ago about I want to go prove to other people how good I am. So instead of me thinking I am afraid of losing this approval, I want you to think I'm going out there to play my best. I'm going to go compete. I'm going to go work hard. I'm going to focus on dominating the competition. So we switch that a little bit more into getting the approval rather than being afraid of losing the approval. Which again, I do want to just kind of caution that can definitely be a slippery slope. But that basketball player who I'm working with, who's a college player right now, that's really the approach that he and I are taking. So our last conversation, he has a game this weekend, so we're going to see how it goes for him. But we talked about how right now he's passing up shots. He's afraid of embarrassing himself because he's afraid of missing. And so he plays forward, so he's playing down low, and he's just passing up shots. But his coaches want him to score more. They know that he can be a dominant player. So we are working to shift his mindset to be more about, I want to dominate the paint. Every time I get the ball, I'm going to attack the basket. So he's out there trying to compete instead of being so focused on impressing other people. So the third tip is we really want to work on getting ourselves to stop predicting what other people are thinking. And this one really just has to do with you controlling your thinking, your own thinking, and controlling your self talk more because we don't really know what other people are thinking. And sometimes we try to guess what people are thinking about us based on their facial expressions, their body language. But most of the time, this idea that other people are thinking that we are bad players is really, again, us projecting onto them the way we are thinking about ourselves. Because I feel like I've been playing badly, so I'm assuming all these people watching are also going to think that I'm playing badly. We really want to work to catch ourselves when we think like that and try to refocus ourselves back on, well, okay, I might not feel great about my play today. They're probably not thinking a ton about it, but I need to work to reframe my personal thinking into more of a growth mindset. How can I learn from what I did today? When we can catch ourselves, when we begin to project onto other people and predict what they're thinking, that's going to start to reduce this tendency we have to fixate on these thoughts other people have about us, which again is really at this core of the worry that we have when we compete. Now, kind of going along those same lines, I do want you to work on creating more of a confidence anchor or a mindset anchor for yourself. So let's imagine that you catch yourself predicting what other people are thinking, or you just catch yourself worrying about what other people think. You want to have an anchor that you can tell yourself that will bring you back into the moment and remind you how you actually need to play. This could be something as simple as I can't control what they think. I'm just going to focus on playing freely. Or it could be as simple as effort. There's a hockey player I'm working with right now who again deals a lot with this idea of worrying about what other people think. And so his anchor is effort. No matter how successful he is on the ice, no matter how many mistakes he's made or how great he's playing, we always want to come back to this idea of at this given moment in the game, I'm going to give full effort. So really all of these anchors, no matter what you decide to tell yourself, need to be focused on something controllable that you can do to help yourself execute, because when we worry about other people, one of the other reasons that I didn't mention earlier that this hurts us is that it just distracts us. If I'm spending so much time during the competition thinking about what other people are thinking of me, I'm not giving as much focus to the controllable parts of my game that will actually help me succeed. And then the succeeding again is maybe what's going to help impress other people if that's the way those other people are judging me. Now, the last kind of final tip that I have for you with this whole idea is to work on embracing these mistakes as part of your learning, just progress and growth as an athlete. If we think about when you worry what other people think, most of this will always come back to mistakes. I'm not worried about what other people think of me, in terms of succeeding, because of course they're going to probably think good of me if I succeed. I'm thinking, well, what if I make a mistake right here? What if I don't perform well during this game and I mess up in a crucial moment? What are people going to think of me then? So I have this fearful approach to mistakes due to my assumption that if I make mistakes, people will think less of me. And again, this ties back to the idea of self worth. If my self worth is tied into my performance, mistakes become something I need to avoid at all costs because they're going to mean that I don't think I'm a good person or a good player. And even worse than that, that means other people aren't going to think so either. But if I can work to change the way I see mistakes, embracing them as part of the process, accepting that they're going to happen, they're just part of the game, and then I work to learn from them, that can start to shift my mentality a little bit. And to go back to that basketball player example, one final thing that he and I discussed is I asked him, I said, if you knew that you were going to make mistakes in the game, just 100%, you knew that you were going to make mistakes in the game today, do you feel like you would go into the game trying to avoid those mistakes as much? Or would you accept, yeah, all right, I'm going to make those mistakes. I know they're going to happen. I don't know when they're going to happen, but I know they will happen. And so since I know those mistakes are going to happen, I'm going to focus instead on just being as dominant as possible. And he said, of course, he would focus on being as dominant as possible because if he knew the mistakes were going to happen, he couldn't avoid them. He wouldn't worry about them so much. And that is a weird way to think. I understand that, like trying to get you to think about accepting that mistakes will inevitably happen. It's not the most attractive idea to take, but I really think it's the truth. You may have a couple games throughout the season that are close to perfect, where you don't really make much mistakes. But even the games that you play really well, there will still be one or two mistakes that you make during the game. That's just part of sports. Doesn't matter what sport you play. And so if I'm so caught up in trying to avoid these mistakes, again, because I'm so worried about what other people think, that's just going to lead to more underperforming and further strengthen this cycle of worry because the more I underperform, the more I worry about what other people think. But if I can accept that mistakes will happen, if I can embrace them and kind of push them aside and say, these are not going to be the focal point of my game anymore. I'm not going to fixate so much on minimizing mistakes. I'm going to focus on playing my best. I'm going to focus on being as aggressive as possible, making things happen, be as effective of a part of the team as I can be. Now I'm freeing myself up to just play. And I'm also freeing myself up to not worry so much about what other people think because, again, most of that worry will be fixated on mistakes. So those are just a few tips, a few strategies that you can start working on, but I know that this is a continual process of trying to get yourself to not focus and fixate so much on other people. So if you are interested in a more personalized approach, working with me one-on-one where we will talk together to work through this tendency you have to worry about what other people think. I have put a link in the description below to schedule a free introductory coaching call just to learn more about my one-on-one coaching program. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and feel free to share it with any athlete you know who does struggle with worrying about what other people think and that controls their play. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.